So good morning, everybody. I do make that 10 o'clock. So the inquiry is now open. First and foremost, nod heads, shake heads. Can everybody hear me? That's a good start. Great news. So my name, as the name suggests here, Matthew Woodward. I'm a chartered town planner. I've been appointed by the Secretary of State to hold this inquiry. I do understand this inquiry is mainly being run as an in-person event with the option to observe online. However, I did have a brief conversation with the council when I came into the building. I've seen some correspondence which does suggest there may be some online participation. It's probably best actually just to ask the council at this stage, are they expecting presence online? Okay, so my initial thoughts, my initial observations are that it's going to be available on the council's website as a streaming offering as opposed to an interactive. Yes, okay, that's fine. So just to make people aware, this is being broadcast online. So this is an inquiry. This inquiry is into an appeal made by Access Land Partnerships Limited, Bottisham Farming Limited under Section 78 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. Against the decision of East Cambridgeshire District Council to give, against the failure, of East Cambridgeshire District Council to give notice of their decision within the prescribed period for the development described as, and I will read out the development verbatim. It's the development of a retirement care village in Class C2, comprising housing with care, communal health, wellbeing and leisure facilities, and C3 affordable dwellings comprising up to 30% on-site provision, public open space, play provision, landscaping, car parking, access and associated development, land to the rear of 163 to 187 High Street and east of Rowan Close, Bottisham. Are we all in the right place? That's the first question. Yes, good. That's good news. I'm going to just move on to a few housekeeping matters, and I will, towards the end of this opening, just ask if anyone's got any comments or observations on the way that the inquiry is going to be run this week. But starting with the obvious in terms of mobile phones, please keep them on silent. And in terms of the emergency evacuation procedures, could the council just explain, is a fire alarm test expected? And what is the fire escape procedure, please?
No fire.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So I'm shortly going to take names of those who wish to speak at the inquiry today. Now, in the good old days, we did used to ask for an attendance list to be circulated. And for various reasons, which I don't need to go into, we no longer ask for attendance lists. And what that means is that as far as my decision's concerned, I will list all the people who make representations during the inquiry. So it's important that you tell me accurately what your name is and what your interest is in the scheme. But also, if you want any qualifications or any other related information relating to your profession to appear on the decision, then please do tell me. The alternative is, and I speak mainly in relation to the main parties, that you send me a list of qualifications of respective witnesses, which is sometimes easier. So when I hand over to each respective main party, if you just tell me how you wish me to take on board relevant qualifications, etc. So I will start with the appellant. If you could just introduce the advocate, if you could introduce yourself and then your witnesses, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Robert Walton, KC, so Robert and then Walton, WALTON, King's Counsel. What I'll do, sir, rather what I have done is at the start of my opening submissions, I've got a list of the witnesses and their qualifications, but I'll get that through electronically as well, so it can be cut and paste into your decision. So because I know we're starting with a round table, I wonder whether actually just passing the ball down the line so people can introduce themselves, if that would assist.
Yes, good morning, sir. My name is Beg your pardon. I'll do that again. My name is Colin Brown. I'm a planning partner at Carter Jonas, and I'll be providing the planning evidence at this inquiry.
Good morning, sir. My name is Peter Canavan, also a planning partner at Carter Jonas, here today giving evidence on the alternative site assessment.
Good morning, sir. My name is Jessamine Venables. I'm a director at Carterwood, giving evidence, or rather here on the basis of planning evidence for need.
So can I add to that list in respect of the Heritage Roundtable? I think we're having a short heritage session tomorrow. Rob Sutton from Cotswold Archaeology will be here to assist with that. And also just to say, behind us, we've got Matt Hare and Phil Grant, both from Axis. And the reason I introduced them, obviously, just so you know who they are, but also when we come to the round table session on alternative sites, those will be two names you will have seen on, for example, on email correspondence. And so insofar as they can help, we'll draw them into that session so you get the full picture.
Yes, and just to clarify, they're more than welcome to take part in the roundtable session. That's not a problem. I've just made the mistake of leaving my microphone on when other people are speaking, and I think it does affect the sound. Sorry, that's not a criticism at all. I did the same. So just be aware that we can't leave microphones on when we're not speaking. That's so. Can I just ask, is there anyone else? No one else is expected then over the course of the week? Okay, thank you. And can I ask the council's advocate to introduce themselves and their witness and any other witnesses who may be attending during the week? Thank you.
Morning, sir. It's Jack Smythe, SMYTH, the barrister instructed by the council's solicitor, who's Maggie Camp, CAMP. And I have Andrew Phillips, the officer who sits to my right, who you have a proof from. There's also a conservation officer, Chris Patrick, so that's Patrick with an R, or two R's, who can make himself available tomorrow if that would assist.
Okay, thank you. I will explain during the course of today what I'm intending to get out of tomorrow's session, so we can have that discussion. Sorry, can you just repeat your name, the gentleman next to you? Sorry, I didn't catch the pronunciation.
Andrew Phillips.
Andrew Phillips, thank you. And I assume there is no one else expected then. You've already referred to one person, no one else during the course of the week. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Walton, could you just confirm who were you instructed by?
Carter Jonas, sir, sorry. I'll put that in the list of appearances, so you'll have everything in one place.
Thank you. Okay, and I have received a list of people likely to attend the inquiry today, and I can see a few people sat towards the back of the room. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. When I've done that, if the council could just assist in relation to anyone else that is expected to attend who might not be here today, for example, they could just cross-reference the list that they have in front of them. That would be helpful. Yes, I've not thought about the logistics of the microphone, actually. There are a couple of options. You can either just perch at the end of the table there. I think when it comes to speaking, we could perhaps rearrange these tables or whatever works best, really, as long as you've got access to a microphone. Oh, okay. I thought that wasn't set up at the moment. It is. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, just for the purposes of introducing yourself, either use a microphone there or come to the witness table, whichever is more comfortable is fine. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Tamara Keith, GP partner at Bottisham Medical Practice. And yeah, I'm here as an interested party. Last time I was a Rule 6 party, but I haven't been able to take 2 weeks off. So just interested party today.
Understood. Thank you. And the next lady, thank you.
I'm Councillor Charlotte Kane. I'm the ward councillor for Bottisham. I'd also like to speak on behalf of a colleague, Councillor Claire Daunton, who's the county councillor for the neighbouring.
My name is John Ogborn, OGBORN, and I'm Chair of Bottisham Parish Council. Thank you.
Just to reference Dr. Tamara, if that's the correct pronunciation. I did receive the email that you sent, which was last week, and unfortunately I wasn't in the office, so apologies for not responding to the correspondence. In answer to your question, you're here today. Yes, you can speak, and that will take place later on today, and I'll come on to that in the timetable. Could I ask the council, is anyone else expected? I seem to recall there were 4 people on the list, but I think the council has just mentioned she's speaking on behalf of someone else as well, so that's probably where the 4 names may have come from. Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, of course, if anybody else does attend throughout the course of the week, I will endeavour to fit them into the programme. But if we press on for the moment, and
Could I just lean into your reference to the email from Dr. Keith? Was that simply a procedural email in terms of speaking? There wasn't anything. In short, I don't think we've seen it, so I was just worried there was anything more substantive in it than.
Okay, well, I'm sure it could be sent on by the council. It was simply a case of, I think that the doctors had to take some time off work and asking if she was able to speak. Sorry if I'm speaking out of turn there, but
That's fine.
and so it was just a clarification that there would be opportunity to speak today.
No need to see it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I should have asked, and I'm going to make an assumption here, which may be completely incorrect. The 3 interested parties, are you speaking in objection to the scheme? Yes, okay, thank you. So as I've already alluded to the fact this has been recorded, sorry, not recorded, streamed online. I don't suppose anybody wishes to record the event. If they do, please do let me know. I'm not averse to that. I'm not sure whether the online stream is being recorded or not. Yes, okay, just for information, it will be online and recorded on YouTube. So the event is obviously being run primarily in person, so I don't need to really go through too much detail in terms of the digital format, because that's not going to affect us today. So other than to say, if there is somebody who wishes to speak online later in the week, then that is still a possibility based on the council's, the format of this room does allow that to take place. So in terms of notification letters, I have seen copies of the council's letters notifying both of the appeal and confirming the date, time and location of the inquiry. And I have a list of persons to whom notification was sent. And so I'm satisfied that the proper notification procedure has been followed. In addition, I have been provided with all written copies of letters made in response to the planning application and to the appeal. And irrespective of whether or not people wish to speak during the inquiry, I will still be taking into account written representations. Additional information for everyone present in the room is that there was a case conference call held via Microsoft Teams on the 8th of September. That was between myself and the 2 main parties, that being the council and the appellant. That was held to discuss the procedure for the inquiry, and the merits of the appeal were not discussed. In terms of the evidence, I have obviously received proofs of evidence and summaries from both the council and the appellant's witnesses. I have read these proofs and I would expect them to be largely taken as read. I haven't received a rebuttal statement from either party as such. Just to confirm, I haven't missed anything, Mr. Walton.
So no, not any sort of formal rebuttals, but as I'm sure we'll come to in a moment, there's been a slight flurry of documents with both parties putting in further information in relation to, in particular, the alternative sites assessment. But if we come back to that, I can capture that all for you by reference to a note.
Yes, thank you. That was my understanding as well. Mr. Smythe, any formal rebuttals? I will come on to the other correspondence. Okay, thank you. So just to spell out the proofs that I have received, just to make sure we've all seen the same information. So from the appellants, I have a planning proof, a need proof, a greenbelt and landscape proof, and an alternative site. And in relation to the council, I have a planning proof. Appended to this is an alternative site assessment undertaken by Gerald Eve Consultants. Is that correct? And do each respective party have a copy of proofs? They should have been exchanged, but double checking. Yes. Okay. So I will be following the procedure set out in the Town and Country Planning Appeal Rules 2000. Some of you will be familiar with the process, but I shall summarise anyway as a reminder and for other persons in the room. So when I've concluded my opening remarks, I will invite the appellant and the council to make an opening statement, and this will help everybody understand the main arguments. And then I will hear from interested parties who wish to speak. And following that, there will be topic areas dealt with through a variety of different giving of evidence. Now, this will form formal cross-examination or roundtable sessions. And this will primarily focus on alternative sites, which will be a roundtable session. Other planning considerations, including heritage, which will be a roundtable session. Planning or the planning balance, that's going to be through formal cross-examination, and then there will be a session on conditions and planning obligations, and that will be a roundtable session. Each topic will be dealt with in turn. In terms of the cross-examination, I will ask the council to present their evidence first so that their objections can be heard, followed by the appellant. And the appellant's advocate will then have the opportunity to cross-examine the council's witness, and the council's advocate may then put some questions in re-examination. And I will then ask the appellant to present their evidence in the same way. So it's a topic-based inquiry, effectively. I will allow questions from interested parties on each topic area after formal presentation and cross-examination of evidence. And I may ask questions of each of the planning witnesses myself, although I will try and leave that to the end of formal presentation of evidence, so as not to disrupt each of the witnesses. I'm not inviting an application for costs. However, if anyone does intend to make an application for an award of costs, this should be done before the close of the inquiry, and I'll briefly touch upon that later in this opening. So when all the main issues have been dealt with, I will then hear a discussion on conditions and planning obligations. And just to make it clear, this is standard procedure. It does not indicate I've made my mind up on the case, and it does not diminish the council's opposition to the proposal or the appellant's case that planning permission should be granted. In fact, I will briefly touch upon costs now. Can I ask Mr. Walton, is there an intention at this stage? Is there anything you'd like to say about costs? Is there an intention to submit an application at this stage?
So I have no instructions to make a cost application at this stage.
Okay, and Mr. Smythe? Okay, well, we will revisit that towards the end of the inquiry. Just for information, I do have the power to initiate an award of costs. If I were to do this, it would follow a written procedure after the inquiry is closed. And finally, I will hear closing submissions at the end of the inquiry from the council and the appellant, and I would ask that these are submitted to me in writing beforehand. In respect of the site visit, I have visited the site the general surroundings of the site, so I'm familiar with the surrounding area. I will make a formal visit during the inquiry or after the inquiry is closed, and I will address this shortly. In terms of the roundtable sessions, I'm hoping there is some information circulated which sets out an agenda and gives some information as to how that will run. Just to make it clear, it will be led by myself, by the inspector. There will be no formal cross-examination during these sessions. So I'm sure you're all aware of that, but just to make it clear, that's the distinction between the formal inquiry, cross-examination and the roundtable sessions. Before the inquiry, I agreed a draft timetable with the appellant and the council. So copies should, again, be circulated. And I did receive information from respective advocates advising the time necessary for the presentation of evidence in relation to the two witnesses. And so I've taken that into account in formulating the timetable. So with all that being said, it seems to me that the inquiry is likely to last 3 days, but we do have some flex. Clearly, it was initially a 2-week inquiry. Certainly, the 3 days would take us up to Thursday. There are some limitations in terms of room availability Thursday afternoon. So we do have Friday if things do overrun. I think to go into next week would be unfortunate. And clearly we will try and conclude the inquiry this week. Simply in relation to, inconvenience and excessive costs, it's best to try and wrap things up in a single week. So we will try and stick to the timetable. So just moving on to the timetable, it's probably worth just having a quick look at that, and I will seek views on this in case there's anything else I need to take into account. So as you can see, I'm intending the timetable, the day be split up into 4 sessions. I will be led really by each of the main parties as to when breaks might be appropriate, but obviously I'm not going to disrupt people if they're giving evidence. So we will try and finish at 5 o'clock or approximately 5 o'clock. And I was thinking of a 9:30 start tomorrow and Thursday, but if that's not possible, so I will ask for comments shortly, but if that's not possible, please do let me know. As I say, the room's not available on from 2 o'clock on Thursday. So irrespective of whether the inquiry is formally closed, that seems to me to be an opportune time to do the site visit. So I will start with Mr. Walton. You have made some comments already insofar as there are no objections, but is there anything you'd like to say about the timetable?
So no, other than just to reiterate, so people can hear, we think this is perfectly workable and realistic. And in terms of 9:30 starts, unless anybody's shaking their heads, they're not, we're good to go for 9:30.
Mr. Smythe.
Yes, happy if 9:30 starts, and myself and Mr. Walton had a discussion early, and we both have confidence we can complete the inquiry in 3 days.
Okay, thank you. And interested parties, any comments? Obviously, you're in attendance today. You're more than welcome to attend consecutive days. You don't have to attend. Would a 9:30 start present any problems? Are you happy with the timetable? Yes, okay, that's good. Okay, so we will adopt this timetable, allowing for some flex, but we are going to try our best to stick to this, as I say, in the interests of costs and efficiency. So I'm going to now quickly move on to the plans, just to, again, make sure I have the correct plans in front of me and I'm making a decision on the correct information.
So we have a hard copy set here to hand up if that would assist. I put a set across for the council as well.
Is this a copy of all the plans?
All the plans. Yeah.
Yes, and the council, you no objection to, yeah, okay, that's helpful, thank you. Thank you. So just on that point, the plans which are before me to make a decision, as far as I can see, are set out in the statement of common ground and are provided as core documents. And it's paragraph 1.5 of the statement of common ground, which sets out the drawings and plans upon which the appeal should be determined. Is that correct?
So yes, subject to, I haven't got the statement of common ground in front of me, but you'll recall, sir, at the case management conference, we introduced the prospect of revising 2 of the drawings. to capture the fact that there's uncertainty as to the ability to deliver the footway cycleway out of the northwest corner of the site. Your CMC note at the end of that recorded that, and we have circulated copies of the revised plans to you already and to the council. The council have indicated they've got no problem with us dealing with those plans. I put that neutrally because, again, at the CMC, you indicated, and I think this is the right way to go, is we hear the inquiry on the basis of both options, and then you can make a decision at the end, having heard both parties in closing submissions, as to whether you're prepared to proceed on the basis of the revised plans or whether you want to stick with the original ones. But if that's an agreed process, then that works for us, and that seems to me to be a very sensible way to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Do you mind? I'm going to park the amended plan for the moment, just because what I've done is I've gone through the documents I've received so far and I've tried to reference them in numerical order. So because I've not seen the plans, I think it's probably best to address those at the end, because it will help the numbering system that I've devised. But no, point taken. Aside from the two plans that you've just mentioned, the statement of common ground sets out the plans. And the reason I'm making a distinction here is because you're asking me to make a decision on certain plans as opposed to taking into account plans. So that's my point. I just want to be absolutely clear that I've got the right list of plans, and in the event the appeal is allowed, that a plan isn't approved that shouldn't be, for example. But I think if you could check perhaps throughout the remainder of this morning and just make sure that list is correct. I mean, we will cover this in conditions to some extent anyway. It will be covered in conditions. Mr. Smythe, sorry, Mr. Walton.
I was just going to say, so yes, in short, what's in the statement of common ground is the position that's agreed between the parties as the way we would like you to proceed. Subject, of course, to those revisions we'll come back to.
Yes, okay, Mr. Smythe. Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay, so a little bit out of order, but I'll deal with the plans very shortly. But firstly, can I just go through all the documents I've received during the last couple of weeks, just to make sure that the list I have is correct, and I will then make a decision as to whether to accept these documents as well. So I think it's in no particular order, actually. It's just the way that I've addressed them in preparation for this inquiry. So the first item I have is the single issue review documents, which includes a report from the planning inspectorate and an inspector's report on main modifications to policy growth 1 of the local plan. This was presented to me by the council. It appears to me there are no objections from the appellant in me accepting those documents. And what flows from that is a summary position from both respective parties as to how those documents and how any changes to that policy affect their respective cases. So can I just ask Mr. Smythe, given it came from the council first, very briefly, it's probably going to be covered in the planning evidence, but just explain to me succinctly what the document actually is.
Yes. Which inform the council's housing requirement has become stale. And at the last appeal, the inspector found that growth 1 and 2 were out of date because the evidence base which informs the housing requirement is out of date. And the upshot is that if the council approves the SIR, it's common ground between the parties that full weight can then be given to growth 1 and 2.
Okay, so it's not been approved at the moment. The inspector's report's been received. Obviously seen that. It needs to go through a council process.
Yes, so it's intended to come before the council on the 19th of October. So that's next week. This week. This Thursday. Sorry, yes. In 2 days' time.
So it could be during the course of this inquiry, quite possibly, or certainly by the closing. Okay. And you referred to two policies there. I read the document and you seem to refer to growth 1. Could you just explain the relationship then between, is it in relation to policies growth 1 and growth 2?
Well, implicitly, growth 2 is a locational strategy, focusing development in the 3 principal areas. Yes.
Okay, well, it's, I don't need to get, we don't need to go into the merits of this now, because it seems to me that this is going to be addressed during the planning balance, the planning evidence. But if I can just ask Mr. Walton, there's no objection to this being received, and you've provided comments on this. I think what I'm after is it doesn't prejudice either party's case. You're happy that the evidence submitted in the proofs isn't undermined or prejudiced by this latest information.
That's absolutely right, sir. On this document, and having had a helpful discussion this morning with Mr. Smythe, and I know there's been discussions between the parties over the last few days, there's no issue from either party as to the admissibility and the relevance of any of these documents we're going to come on to now. So that's agreed between us. But if I could just also flag up, so I don't know whether you will have seen, but Mr. Brown has sent an email through updating the statement of common ground, because at the end of it, there's a list of core documents, and all of these documents, this being the first one, have been given with agreement between the parties new core document numbers. So this one, for example, he said, trying to find it, 4.34, is that right? 3.4, I beg your pardon, 3.4. Thank you. Of course, it's a policy document, isn't it? And the ones we're going to come on to are at the end of CD4, that folder, and there's 8 or so there. So I don't, if it would help, I had hoped we might get a copy of this printed out for you so you can see the list. It would be a quicker way of doing it, I suspect.
Yeah, well, I think really what I need to understand is, if providing I have a list of the latest version of core documents, yes, and those documents are reflected by the documents in the library online, then actually it doesn't really affect, I don't need to go through each and every one. I don't think, as long as we have a consistent list that we're all working to and it's all agreed, I've no problem with that.
So we do, and the CD4 folder currently ends at 441. I think there's only one more document to add. We'll do it in that same way, giving it another number, putting it online, printing off a hard copy for anybody who wants it. If I can introduce that document now, then you will have a complete package of all the additional information.
Yes, okay, well, just bear with me a second, sure, because I did try and number things in logical order, just because I didn't want to have a long discussion about which documents numbered which. So I'll start off the single issue review documents, of which there are 2. So that's the inspector's report and report on main modifications. I'm going to reference that. So this is in the inquiry library, if you like. That's going to be I1. That's going to be
we can do that, sir. Absolutely. It's just, yes, that we've already, as I say, we've given it a core document number, and it's in that list,
right,
and it's online already. I tell you what we might do, sir. Could we get printed off for you a hard copy of the bang up to date core document list, and then you'll see all these documents tabled with a number next to it, and then you can just cross refer.
Yes, okay. The only thing is, Mr. Walton, what I like to do in the decision is set out which documents have been received as late evidence. And so I like to have, and it's just a procedural matter really, just so when people read the decision, at the end of the decision, there'll be a list of all documents received during the inquiry. They may well be properly referenced during in the core documents. And I know this is adding a layer of complexity, but it's just so that everyone is clear that during the inquiry or shortly before, 10 documents were received as late evidence, and I have to do a procedural paragraph and explain the reasons why I've accepted them as late evidence. Hence why I think we're probably going to double up on referencing. So with that in mind, the single issue review documents and the inspector's report on main mods, the 2 documents will be I1 in my decision, because I obviously accepted those documents. And if you, in your evidence, you can refer to the core documents or this library, it's up to you, I don't mind either. And the 2 documents which were provided by both the council, or a document each by the council and the appellant, on the implications of document I1 So the two emails, I think one was a document, one was an email. I'm going to accept those as well, clearly. So that will be document I2, or those two documents will be I2. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Walt, there is some logic to this. It might seem a little bit overly.
Not also actually, because I think looking at it, I don't think those last two documents, the evidence submitted in response has been given a core document number.
Okay.
So actually having that as I, whatever it is, two and three would make sense.
Okay, sorry, I have just having said that, I've just made a mistake. So the council's position statement, if you like, on the inspector's report and growth 1 and 2, that's going to be I2. The appellant's respective position statement is going to be document I3. Are we all happy? Does anyone want to ask any questions about that? I know it's slightly complicated, but I think it's all going to come out in the planning evidence effectively. Yes, okay. So could the council, this will be a very short explanation, I assume. I have received a East Cambridgeshire Authority Monitoring Report 2022 to 23. That's an interim report on housing. Again, Mr. Smythe, or either person can explain. Just explain to me what that document is and why I should accept it.
Yes, Inspector, if I can, it's just giving an update on housing figures delivered. And the bits that the council are relying on, if you want me to go through that, will be the sort of housing figures, like affordable housing provided since the last appeal.
What's the date of the
Report?
Yes.
It's the interim report is October 2023.
And when does that, what are the dates in terms of when's the evidence, when does that go up to kind of the?
So last year is the completions 2022 to 2023.
Yeah, okay, no, understood. That's fine. Mr. Walton. Okay, well, I mean, that's in the public domain. There's no reason why I shouldn't accept that. So I will accept that document. So that's I4. So East Cambridgeshire Authority Monitoring Report is going to be document I4. So the council, I did receive, again, no particular order here, so apologies if it doesn't make much sense, the ordering, but the next document is an appeal decision at Papist Way in Oxfordshire. Firstly, has Mr. Walton seen this document? And Mr. Walton, have you seen? Yes, okay. Could the council explain again, why do I need to take this appeal into account?
Yes, Inspector. The main elements of this is the weighting the Secretary of State gave and the Inspector gave in this case on specialist older person, extra care facilities, and also how they weighted housing figures like 5-year land supply.
And you intend to refer to that in the roundtable session or in planning evidence?
Planning evidence.
Okay, okay, thank you. Mr. Walton, any problems with that? Okay, I will accept that document. So that's document I5. Just moving on now to the alternative sites and hoping this is not going to be too complicated. So the appellant emailed a link to an alternative sites note, which I am told is to assist with the roundtable session on alternatives, which is scheduled to take place this afternoon. I assume, unless I'm told otherwise, that the council have seen a copy of said document and annexes. Okay. My only question really was in terms of what's in the document. I did assume at first it was a summary of respective positions, but I'm not sure. I think it possibly goes further than that. Does it update the appellant's assessment of alternative sites? It seems to me that some of the sites had some additional information in there that wasn't present before.
Yes, what it's meant to do is just be an easy go-to document for that roundtable session. So it takes each of the 15 sites that have been identified in turn, and sorry, I know talking for people who haven't even seen it yet, explains where it is and what the planning history is. It records, for example, whether it's agreed between the parties that the site isn't available, so it's all in there. But you're absolutely right. There is some additional information in relation to some of the sites, which is captured in that document, and that is of a piece with the fact that in fact both parties have been updating their positions as best they can, so that you have bang up to date information on that. I'm pretty sure that that note, well, no, I know that that note captures everything, obviously up until the date of its production. There are one or two additional emails. I'm going to introduce one in a moment in relation to one or two of the sites. But yes, to draw everything together and make that session as easy as possible. So I don't know if you've got a hard copy of that note. If you'd like one to page turn and write notes on as we go through that session, we've got one here.
It probably would help, Mr. Walton, because I had trouble printing the document, actually.
Right.
I'm not sure, there was some security thing on it. I mean, it might have been my machine, so don't worry too much about that if you have a hard copy. While you're circulating or providing me with a copy, Mr. Smythe, you've seen the document. Have you seen the up to the fact? Well, Mr. Walton's alluded to the fact it provides some more up-to-date comments, and I just want to make sure that you're in a position to, if necessary, address that document. Okay, that's fine. So I am going to accept the documents. It's obviously relevant to the discussion on alternative sites, and as long as the council have had opportunity to look at that, then I'll leave the emails for the moment because it will spoil my numbering system. So okay, so the alternative sites document and all the annexes, of which I can't remember how many there are, they are documents I6.
Thank you, sir. And just to note that that's the note itself rather than the hard copy annexes, which certainly that's how I was dealing with it. The note in front of me, annexes on as core documents, but we can print off all the annexes too, if that would assist you for the session.
I think actually I'm okay. I can refer to the annexes if necessary by referring to the documents online. So yeah, thank you for the printed copy, but I think I don't need the annexes. Thank you. Okay, so I6 accepted those documents. Actually, on a similar on the same topic, I have received documents as well from the council, and I'm going to read them one by one. There's an email in relation to Kennet Garden Village. There's an appeal decision, which is a SOAM appeal decision, which is 3282449. And I also have a policies map. And that policies map appears to be in relation to the settlement of SOAM. Again, could I ask the council why these documents are relevant?
Yes, of course, Inspector. So the Kennet email is an update on this when that site is going for advertisement on C2 use class, so going to market to sell the land. The Broadpeace appeal decision has some relating to the areas of growth, but the other issue that it brings up, which will be the alternative site assessment this afternoon, is this was done in a sanitary cordon area for Anglian Water. So this was a housing allowed in that space, which is on the SOAM policy map showing that area. And so it's discussion over the alternative site assessments and where development can and can't go.
So he's going to assist in the evidence that you present, particularly during the alternative site assessment. And Mr. Walton, yes, okay. Well, I'll accept the three documents, and the Kennet Garden Village will be I7. The SOAM appeal decision, so that's 3282449, will be I8, and the policies map will be I9. We are nearly there. I know there are a couple of other documents as well. Just moving on to an email from the council relating to an invalid planning application at the rear of Station Road in Fordham. And this was submitted fairly late on. I think I received it yesterday. It might have been emailed to the case officer prior to that. Again, why is this relevant? Mr. Walton, I will let you come in shortly just to outline your position.
It's for helping discussion over the alternative site assessments. I can go into more detail now if you want me to.
Well, my only observation being that it's not valid at the moment, so I wasn't clear.
Yes, so it's an application for C3 dwellings outside the village framework. But the applicant in that circumstance has said that the C3 dwellings can provide care from very low levels of care to very high levels of care. So it goes into how you can provide care across the district. And on the sort of size and types of care you can provide and how you deal with that need, basically.
Okay, so is this about the discussion on alternative sites as opposed to need, or
It's, yeah, the council accepts the need.
Yes, I was going to
It's
say,
just how
well,
you
that's
deal with that need.
that's fine. No, that's fine. Thank you. That's really helpful. Mr. Walton, it seems to me that's going to be again something discussed during the alternative sites, just to make sure you have a copy. Any
Yes,
views?
sir, absolutely. And we can pick up the detail about, the validity of the application stuff when we come to talk about it. But in principle, no problem with it coming in.
Okay, I-10. So that's going to be the Station Road site in Fordham, the planning application, the documentation I've received from the council. That's document I-10. The next document, which I am going to accept unless I'm told otherwise, is SIL compliance statement and supporting documents. And that does include some documents submitted by the county council as well in support of the SIL compliance statement. There seems to be no reason why I did ask for that document. So clearly I'm going to accept it unless I'm told by Mr. Walton there's any problems. Okay, that's fine. So that's I-11. Revised statement of common ground. Now I have here received 16th of October 2023. That's been updated. The latest version, Mr. Walton, could you remind me the date on it?
The 16th, as in yesterday, sir.
Oh, sorry, maybe I got that right
That-
then.
Hopefully that is the one that came through from Mr. Brown with, as I say, right at the end, this updated list of core documents.
That's fine. No, I did
So-
change a date. I did actually change that at the last minute, so that's fine.
Wonderful.
Yes, obviously, if that's the latest version you have,
Yes, just to clarify, on the bottom, the one we got sent, it still says update on the 13th, but it was received on the 16th. So we are presuming that's the same.
Yeah, sent yesterday is the one that we want to use. I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry, as Mr. Phillips says, it does say the 13th of October on the front cover, but the PDF reference is actually the 16th. So sorry, that's slightly confusing.
is that in the core documents?
It
wa-
is now, yes, it
yes,
is. It's
okay.
It's core document 5. So just bear with me. It's 5.1, CD 5.1.
So, Mr. Smythe, if you'd just like to make sure you have the right version, it's in the core documents. So that will be, for my referencing, that will be I-12.
Correct. The only thing I would say, yes, the only thing I would say about it in relation to the core document list is the one on the website has not yet been updated. So that's a previous version at the moment. So for example, in the CD4 group, it only runs to CD 4.37. And we're now up to CD 4.41 and in a minute to CD 4.42.
Oh, that's the online version.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, is that in relation to the list or is that in relation to the documents? Because the documents I can see online go, CD4 goes up to 4.39.
So if I can,
Sorry, go on.
if I can help you there. So you're right. If you actually open the CD4 folder online, it does go up to CD 4.41. If, however, you look in the CD5 folder, which is the common statements of common ground, and you look at CD 5.1, which is the principal statement of common ground, at the back of that, the list of CD4 documents only goes up to CD 4.37. So that needs to be updated. So CD 5.1 is not the latest version and needs updating.
Is that understood, Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So are you intending to update that just for consistency's purposes?
It has been sent to the council, so I think they should be able to update it now.
Okay, thank you. There's no immediate rush, but if you could try and put that on as soon as possible, just to make sure we're not kind of referencing the different documents throughout the day. Okay, can I now move on to the other documents that I haven't yet seen? In any order, I don't mind, Mr. Walton, whichever one's easier to present first.
Thank you. With my watch telling me it's time to stand, here I come. This is an email, sir, in relation to one of the 15 sites which we'll be discussing later on. It's the land off Mingle Lane in Stapleford. And like some of the other documents you've seen, it's an email from, in short, a person interested in that site telling us what the latest position is.
Okay, before I accept this document, Mr. Smythe, have you seen the email? You've no objection. And is this in relation to a site that has been presented already, or is this a new site? It's one of the sites in the list.
Site 8 in the list.
Site 8, okay. Well, I mean, it sounds to me as though it's going to be relevant to the discussion. So yes, I will accept that document, and that will be I-12.
So you'll see I scrolled at the top on what the CD number was. My mistake, I didn't at that stage know that we were going and putting I numbers, but you've got.
Yes, so no, that's fine.
CD 42.
That's okay, thank you.
I-13.
Sorry, that is, yes, you are correct. You are correct, Mr. Smythe. It is I-13. Okay, yes, accepted. I'll leave that one there. Mr. Walton?
Nothing to hand in at the moment, but if I could move the document discussion on to a prospective one. I've had a word with Mr. Smythe this morning, and ahead of the roundtable session on other planning matters, that's going to capture heritage. And as I said before, Mr. Sutton from Cotswold Archaeology will be here for us on that, and I think the council might have a conservation officer, but to be confirmed. What we thought it would be helpful to have, rather for you to have, as we've had for other topics, would be a statement of common ground on heritage. What I've asked Mr. Sutton to do is to draft one. I honestly don't think it'll be more than a page long, but it'll capture the assets, the impact, the policy. That's my aim. That's what I've asked him to do. If he can do that in time, I would then propose we give that to the council this afternoon, see whether they're happy with it. If they are, get it signed and give it to you as a statement of common ground.
Okay, I might be able to shape the direction the statement of common ground goes, because the discussion really, I note there isn't a disagreement between the main parties that there would be some harm to the setting of heritage assets, and I won't spend time now referencing those assets, but it's in the statement of common ground. What I'm after really is an understanding from each respective party as to how that relates to the requirements of the Act and the Planning List of Buildings and Conservation Areas Act 1990 requires I give considerable importance and weight to any harm, and so I felt that evidence was not covered in the statement of common ground. So my questions were going to be about that. So if that helps shape the document, then.
Absolutely, sir. And that would be the third section, as it were, in terms of what do you do armed with the information about asset and impact? What then do you do with it as a decision maker? And if we can get that agreed between the parties in a paragraph or two, and I don't think it'll take much more than that, I'm sure that would assist.
Yes, obviously no objection to that in principle. If you'd just like to update me as and when. So I'll reserve space for that document. But Mr. Walton, would you like to now move on? We're going back again now to the two, or I think it was two plans.
Taking the drawings in numerical order, I know you've got a hard copy pack there. The ones that would change would be, in my pack, it's the third one in, but it's drawing number 8621.
Are these the plans?
So these are existing plans.
Yes,
which would change. So in the pack I've handed up, the third one in my one at least is drawing number 8621-004. And it's the access and road alignment plan. And that one, as currently prepared, has, you'll see in the northwest corner of the site, an indicative arrow showing an access point into the site, which was proposed as a footway and cycleway. And as I said at the case management conference, there's some, in short, some uncertainty has arisen as to the deliverability of that. A third party is asserting ownership, as we understand it, or trying to get it registered. So what I raised at that case management conference was amending that plan simply to remove that arrow, in short, and that's what you will see we have done on the what should be the next drawing in the pack, 8621-004B, also entitled Access and Road Alignment. But if you find plan 4 and then 4B and toggle between the two.
Okay, so four B is intended as an alternative. Is that's the long and the
Yeah,
short of it?
In short, so what I would ask, we would like you to determine the appeal on the basis of that plan. As I say, we'll deal with it in closings is probably the best way to deal with it in terms of the acceptability of you doing that. But yes, in short, what we would ask you to do is determine the appeal on the basis of 4B, not 4.
Okay, just for information, I know people in the room may not have seen this plan. It's the first time I've seen the plan as well.
Hopefully that.
No, I chose not to look at the plan.
Okay, sorry. No, that's
Because
fine.
once I've seen the plan, it's very
can't
difficult for
unsee
me
it.
to not see something. So
course.
because I'm going to accept the plan unless the council tell me that they're not happy with it, and I don't get that indication at all. But what I would say about the plan is I am going to cover other planning considerations tomorrow, and I might have some questions about how this affects the merits of the case in relation to accessibility, just to give you a heads up.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping to cover that in the morning.
Yeah.
But in principle, I don't have any real objection. My question is, have other people in the room seen the plan? Is it online?
Is it one of the core documents yet? We'll make sure it is, obviously, and we'll get hard copies. We've got packs here. We can put that in the room so people have got that too. But before jumping to that, if I may, just there's the same point, the same amendment is made in respect of one of the other plans, and that is drawing number 5, which is the public open space and landscape plan, and that drawing number 5 currently has that area where that accessway was proposed as an area of tree and hedgerow removal. And obviously, if the accessway isn't going through there, you wouldn't want to be taking trees out of there. And so we have prepared and sent to the council, obviously well in advance of today, drawing 5C.
Yes, I was going to say it is C on my, it's not B, it's C. Not that it matters, but just making sure I've got the right drawing, that's all.
Yes.
5C.
So 4 goes to 4B, 5 goes to 5C.
Could we print a copy of the plans out? I will have an adjournment after my opening, because I do want people in the room to see copies of the plan. They might not be interested, or they may be interested, but I just want to make sure that everyone in the room's seen the plans.
Yes.
So if we could, during the break, at least make sure that those are circulated, or
Yes.
circulate them now. Yes, thank you. Okay, so just to wrap up in terms of these documents, Mr. Smythe, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay, are we on I-14? I think. I will accept the plans, the caveat being that it's really up to me as a decision maker to determine how much weight to give to the plans, and there will be a discussion about the plans tomorrow morning, hopefully, if we have the session as scheduled in the timetable. So I'll pick up points in the roundtable session. Okay, so the plans, it's probably best referencing them separately, actually. So we've got plan number 4B. Plan 4B will be I-14. Yes, okay, good. Plan number 5C will be I-15. That's fine. That's helpful. Thank you. Are there any other documents, and I'm looking around the room generally, is there any other evidence people would like me to take into account? Any written evidence, that is? Okay, that's fine. So I'll move on from there, noting that there could well be a further document submitted at some point in relation to the statement of common ground, and I'll come on to the section 106 as well shortly. Okay, so we have spent a bit of time actually on the opening, more than I anticipated, but I would like to cover the rest of what I wanted to say before we have a break. And so I'm going to set out really what the nature of this appeal, because I want to make it clear how I'm going to assess this proposal. And first and foremost, the council did not make a determination on the planning application, so the appeal is against non-determination. Therefore, I have relied on the statement of common ground and the topic-specific statement of common ground documents to inform the main areas of contention between the main parties. I appreciate fully this does not necessarily reflect the concerns expressed by other interested parties. However, and in addition, the council's evidence did set out the putative reasons for refusal in their evidence. That is, the reasons that the application would have been refused had the council been empowered to make that decision. In addition, it's worth noting that this is a fresh appeal against a scheme which is very similar but not identical to a previous proposal on this site, which was also subject of appeal and inquiry. And I'm sure you're all aware of this proposal. It was appeal reference 3282241. It was an inquiry that was held in January and February in 2022, and that appeal was dismissed. The statements of common ground, so the agreements between them, agreed documents between the main parties, indicate to me that there is broad agreement with the previous appeal inspector's reasoning and decisions on most of the matters he concluded on. Again, that has shaped the main issues in this appeal. Nevertheless, I must make it clear that this appeal will be assessed on its own merits, and it will be up to me as a decision maker to decide on the weight I give to the previous appeal inspector's findings and how relevant they are to this proposal. And I say all this because there is no disagreement between the main parties that the proposal would be a form of inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and inappropriate is set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, inappropriate development, and that there would be harm to the openness and one of the purposes, including land in the Greenbelt. And so again, I've taken that into account. As a result, I see the main issues in this case are likely to be whether there are suitable alternative sites to accommodate the proposed development, whether any harm in Greenbelt terms by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm would be clearly outweighed by other considerations so as to amount to the very special circumstances necessary to justify the proposal. In addition, and this was not covered in the case management conference, I also think there is another main issue here, and that is the effect of the proposed development on the character or appearance of the conservation area and on the setting of nearby listed buildings. And I'll just briefly set out why I think that is also a main issue. And this is simply because there is no disagreement between the main parties that there would be some harm, and what follows that, some harm to heritage assets. And what follows that is a requirement for me to take that into account in determining whether there are public benefits that outweigh that harm. Therefore, my decision could turn on this reasoning. And as I've already alluded to, we will address heritage tomorrow. With all that being said, it does not preclude me from taking into account any other concerns raised by interested parties. And you will have the opportunity to speak today. I will take into account written representations, and we will be having a discussion tomorrow about general planning considerations and the planning balance as well will cover other planning matters. In addition, there'll be a session on planning obligations and conditions not covered in the main issues. Now, I have spent some time there reading out the way I see the appeal being dealt with this week. And I just want to set that out very clearly and really put it to the main parties and any interested persons. Do you have any comments on what I've just said on the likely main issues, Mr. Walton?
So no, I think those capture the things we need to talk about. Obviously, ultimately, the availability of alternatives and indeed heritage, provided we get over that first policy hurdle, will all get wrapped up in your second one, which is, are there very special circumstances? But absolutely, those are the points we need to talk about. Yeah.
Mr. Smythe. Any comments from anyone else in the room? No, okay, thank you. And before I move on to the final few points, are there any queries about anything I've discussed in terms of the procedure? So particularly in relation to the timetable, availability, for example, I was hoping interested parties could particularly speak today. Providing that's amenable, I assume that you're available this afternoon or later this morning, for example. Okay, what time's your other meeting? Okay, that's fine. I'm hoping to have lunch about 1 o'clock. Sorry. 2:30. Okay, that's fine. I think it's probably best if you go first then, and then we'll work that way along the line. That's fine. We will have a break before you speak, and there will be an opening as well by the council and the appellant. So that will take, dare I say, half an hour? Combined, yes, that's what I was hoping for. Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. A few final points because I've been talking for way too long. Conditions. Do I have a final agreed list of planning conditions? Because
Yes, sir. In the statement of common ground, they're there at the end. As Mr. Brown has just said, the one online will need to be updated to make sure it's the very final version, but I don't think that changes any of the conditions. So anybody who goes online at the moment, looks at CD 5.1, will see that list of agreed conditions.
Agreed. The only condition I think that needs to be changed is condition 2, which is obviously the new draft B and C, if you were to go along with that.
yes, that's the approved plans
Yeah.
list. Yeah. Hopefully I will have a chance to look at the conditions in a bit more detail, just to try and make the roundtable session more efficient. So I usually try and just make some comments beforehand. So I'm not going to promise to do that, but I will try and do that before the session on Thursday. Am I getting lost with maybe I'm wrong with the timetable? Okay, that's helpful, thanks. Okay, site visit. Briefly covered this. In fact, no, we'll deal with the 106 first. What's the latest position on? I have a draft, and I understand there's a further draft to be forthcoming, Mr. Walton.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, there is. We have received no criticism, certainly at this stage, relatively late in the day, some further suggested amends from the council. We are, I don't know whether the very latest version has landed today. So the latest comments from the council have just landed with us. We don't think there's likely to be a problem with sorting them out. They relate to a couple of relatively confined areas of the 106, but we'll just need a little bit of time to process those suggestions and then obviously get an agreed version to you. Three things first from that flow from that. First is, we'll try and do that today, but I think in any event, so it would be helpful to you, I assume, to have that draft to give you a bit of reading time ahead of the 106 session. And so what I was proposing is, effectively, come what may, we'll get the draft to you, if need be, with the council's track changes still in it tonight, so you've got it.
Yes, I think it would help. I mean, it would help make the session more efficient, but that's scheduled for Thursday morning.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do reading tonight, it won't be in relation to the 106.
Okay, thank you.
So I think if it's with me tomorrow at some point.
That might
would-
give us a little bit more time to get the tracks off it and say, look, this is the final agreed draft. We can then give that to you and take it into the session and talk you through it. And then hopefully there won't be any further amends to it, even on the back of the comments that come out of that session. But if there are, we'll need to incorporate those. But then we will need to get the things signed. And so just to flag up at the moment, perhaps in the wrap-up session at the end, once we know what, if any, changes need to be made to that document, I could come back to you and say, well, there are no changes. We can get it signed within 2 weeks. There are some changes. That's going to slow things up a little bit. Can we have 21 days? Whatever it's going to be. But if I, rather than pick the number now, if I can come back at the end.
Yes, okay. And just to make it clear, is this is a unilateral undertaking, or is
Yeah.
this bilateral? Bilateral.
Bilateral.
Trilateral.
Try.
Okay.
There will be a bit of, in a layman's term, faffing when it comes to getting things signed. People sign on Wednesdays only and that sort of stuff. So we'll get there, but we may need a bit of time.
Thank you, Mr. Smythe. Anything to add on that? Okay, so we'll either wait another version tomorrow, the latest version you have, hopefully the final kind of draft for the session on Thursday, and site visits is the final thing I have. I'm going to visit the sites. Clearly, it would be a good idea to have a think between the main parties and any interested persons who have a view on this as well. Where do I need to see the site from? I'm not going to see the site until Thursday. So if you can have a think, it might be, I realize you may not be present throughout the inquiry. So shout out now or speak to the council during one of the adjournments. And what I'm hoping for is a kind of a combined agreed list of viewpoints. If I need to see anything else, if I think I need to see anything else, and obviously I'll do that anyway. But if I could have an indication as to where I need to see the site from.
Yes, so what might help is if we start the draft to prepare it, on an OS base or something, say, look, these are the viewpoints, we'll add ours. And then if we put the thing on the table, or give it to the council, and others can add theirs in.
Just make a light suggestion.
Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you. Yes, okay. Thank you. That's a helpful suggestion. So a walk-in route would be preferable. In addition, I assume I will need accompaniment on the site, or could you just have a think about whether it needs to be an accompanied visit or not? The only is not it's not really a caveat, but just to make the point that if it is an accompanied visit, and it doesn't matter to me either way, the council will need to be present at the very least, and it would be helpful if interested parties do wish to attend, if they were permitted to enter the site as well. But I will leave that with you for the moment. Yes, it's an hour and 15 minutes, which is a longer opening than I was hoping for, but I think actually we have covered. I think I've covered everything that I need to cover. Unless if anyone wants to shout out if they think I've missed anything at this stage. Okay, so we are going to have a break now, and when we come back, there will be opening statements from the council and the appellant. Have you got versions in writing? Yes. Could you provide me with a copy? Could you email a copy as well to the case officer? And Mr. Smythe, is that the same position? Yes. Okay. So we'll take a break for 15 minutes then. If we come back at 11:30. So I'm going to adjourn. The inquiry is adjourned now. We'll return at 11:30. Thank you. Yeah, I do make that 11:30, actually, just gone 11:30, so ready to reconvene. Mr. Smythe, Mr. Walton, are you in a position to do your opening? Yes, that will be 16.
List of appearances with acronyms. And just to say before I go into this text, you wouldn't need AI to realize that these closing openings are based very closely on the openings last time around. I know that's not in evidence, but my colleague, Mr. Simons, presented last time around. And as you've indicated already, so it's a very, very similar scheme, and the openings are therefore very, very similar indeed. So here we go. The government tells us that meeting the need to provide housing for older people is critical, and that these needs should be met with a diverse range of accommodation choices, including what the PPG calls extra care or housing with care. And this scheme, the retirement village proposed here, is a far cry from both sheltered housing and traditional care homes. It involves self-contained extra care homes for private sale and market rent, surrounded by a range of facilities: the coffee shop, the cafe, the restaurant, the shop, and a variety of lounges and activities for social activity and areas for social activity. It will also incorporate a range of health and well-being facilities: spa, gym, treatment rooms, hairdressing salon. All of that alongside Care Quality Commission registered on-site domiciliary care provision available whenever residents need it. As the appellant team explains, a care village like this one will offer residents a chance to downsize or right size from their previous home into private extra care housing within a purpose-designed community setting to better suit their needs as they age, in the knowledge that should their care requirements change, their home will not. And retirement care villages like this one bring with them a massive range of benefits to the mental and physical health and well-being of their residents and to the wider community, including very significant financial savings to the NHS, as explained in the evidence of Mrs. Venables and Mr. Brown. And these benefits are recognised not only in national policy and guidance, but also in reams of academic and industry research into this form of specialist accommodation, as well as, of course, a long list of planning appeal decisions, some of which are before this inquiry. And the spiralling need for this kind of accommodation is not only national and regional, it's a particular district-wide challenge here in East Cambridgeshire. This district's population is rapidly ageing. The number of over 65s is expected to increase by 57% between 2020 and 2040. I should add in there that the number of the over 85s is even more stark in terms of its increase. And the vast majority of these over 65s, almost 70%, will own their own home, which would make them ineligible for example, affordable extra care. And by 2026, so that soon, when the appeal scheme will be ready to deliver, the net need for private extra care accommodation in this district will be 369 homes. And to meet that need so far, this district has one scheme. And how many sites are allocated for private extra care in the council's local plan? None. And how many new schemes have come through the development management process to provide private extra care here? None. And so the need for this care village is profound, and the council has no plans to address that need in a plan-led way, the clearest possible case of policy failure. And as we've shown through the alternative sites assessment undertaken by Carter Jonas, there are no other sites to accommodate a retirement care village like this in the district, which are suitable, available, and achievable. And to be clear, the council still has not identified any, despite having had every opportunity to do so. There's no challenge whatsoever to the methodology used to prepare the ASA, either from Mr. Phillips or from Gerald Eve. And the evidence before the inquiry shows that there are no realistic alternatives to the appeal site. The council has now had years to point to one, and it's still not been able to do so. That speaks volumes. And in the context of the scale of the need, it's why the benefits associated with providing this kind of specialist accommodation for older people on this site as so important. And Mr. Phillips's remnant assertion with respect that even if the evidence shows that none of the sites flagged by Gerald Eve is available, etc., there must be others, that is truly Alice in Wonderland stuff. On top of these substantial benefits, this scheme will deliver critical and much needed affordable housing in a district which is not coming remotely close to meeting its needs. The Strategic Housing Market Assessment 2021 for the district identifies a current need as at October 2021 of north of 500 units and a need of 215 per annum for the period 2020 to 2040. And the latest full AMR, which is dated December 2022, shows the total gross affordable housing completions from 2011 to 2022 has been just 633 dwellings, or just short of 60 a year. These are, of course, serious needs for some of the most vulnerable in our society. They are, as the Secretary of State has said several times, real people in real need now, and the current position is totally unacceptable. The benefits associated with delivering a significant number of affordable homes in a sustainable location are very substantial indeed. In addition to that, this scheme brings with it the range of important benefits identified in Mr. Brown's proof, including the freeing up of family housing, provision of almost 9 acres of public open space, and that's of course provision is substantially above what's required from this scheme, with Bottisham particularly identified as needing new open space for the benefit not only of our residents, but for the wider population of Bottisham, biodiversity enhancements, and very significant economic benefits flowing from a range of permanent new jobs and public facilities associated with the scheme. What then are the harms? Well, it's common ground that the scheme's inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and is by definition harmful. It's also common ground the scheme would reduce the openness of the appeal side and offend against one of the 5 Greenbelt purposes in that it would encroach into the countryside. Substantial weight must of course be given to Greenbelt harm. There's also some less than substantial heritage harm, which of course must be properly weighed in the overall planning balance, but it's common ground that the public benefits of the scheme outweigh the heritage harm it would cause. The council goes on to argue that the scheme's on the wrong side of the line, that is to say adjacent to but outside the settlement boundary of Bottisham. And the council's objection needs of course to be seen in context. The local plan supports extra care to meet needs on the edge of sustainable settlements like this one, and it's common ground that this scheme would have good access to service and facilities. And the plan makes no provision for those needs to be met within settlement boundaries. The scheme's landscape and visual impacts are agreed to be relatively minor. The site's relatively flat, pleasant, but it's an unremarkable field. It's got no statutory or local landscape designations. It's common ground, it's not a valued landscape under the NPPF. And as you'll see when you get on site, sir, its visibility from the wider landscape is very limited. And as Mr. Crawford explains, the effects both on the local landscape and in the wider Greenbelt are minor and will, in any event, only be perceived from the site itself and the immediate surroundings. And of course, so we have a statement of common ground effectively saying as much. So, for all the many documents before you, sir, the question at the heart of this appeal, as you've identified, is simple. Do the scheme's benefits clearly outweigh its harms? If they do, then national policy tells us to grant planning permission applying the balance at paragraph 148 of the NPPF. And our case is simple. The benefits the scheme will deliver are very substantial and the need is compelling. And they clearly outweigh what will only be localized harm to this site and its immediate surroundings. The balance at 148 of the NPPF tilts decisively in favour of granting planning permission. And for those reasons, which we will of course develop in our evidence and in closings, we will in due course ask you to allow the appeal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. Mr. Smythe, you have a copy as well. Thank you. Yeah, so this will be rapidly expanding library of documents. So we're on I-17. In your own time, Mr. Smythe.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The merits of the appeal were fully ventilated and considered by your colleague. The council fully accepts this decision. As I made clear at the CMC, the council has approached the appeal as simply updating the planning judgments of the decision letter in light of the changes in circumstances. It seems to us there are 4 principal changes. Firstly, the ridge height of the buildings have diminished a little, which reduces the visual and openness harm a little. This assists the appellant. Secondly, the extent of the council's affordable housing shortfall has reduced very considerably. This assists the council. It means that the weight to be afforded to the benefit of providing affordable housing must be reduced. Then the shortfall was far greater than it is now. The situation has improved markedly in the last 18 months. Whilst the decision gave substantial weight to the benefit, to reflect this improvement, the council contends for significant weight. It makes no sense to give the same weight to the benefits now as was then. Thirdly, the publication of the single issue review means that, subject to the full council approval, which is anticipated but can't be known for sure, on Thursday evening, full weight can then be afforded to Growth 1 and Growth 2. At the time of the last appeal, it was agreed that Growth 1 and Growth 2 were out of date as the evidence base for the housing requirement was stale. This assists the council. And finally, sir, the fresh alternative site assessment. At the outset, it's helpful to record the large measure of agreement between the parties. It's common ground the council can demonstrate a 5-year supply. The development plan is up to date and the proposal should be judged in accordance with it. Growth 1 and Growth 2, which sets out the locational strategy for the district, should be afforded full weight. The proposal represents inappropriate development in the green belt, such that the onus lies on the appellant to demonstrate very special circumstances. And fifthly, there's a significant need for this form of development. Penultimately, sir, dealing with the alternative sites assessment, it's the appellant's case that it has undertaken a thorough and comprehensive assessment of both the district and the wider market area, which demonstrate there is no other place to locate the appeal. This is a bold assertion, given that Greenbelt covers only 3% of the district. One's expectations for the alternative sites assessments are high. This is for the following reasons. Firstly, given it is so intrinsically improbable that there are no alternative non-Greenbelt sites available in the remaining 97% of the district, the onus is squarely on the shoulders of the appellant to satisfy you that the ASA is thorough, comprehensive and robust. Secondly, this is the appellant's second go. The first planning application was submitted to the council in February 2020. The ASA was provided for the very first time, where the appellant's proofs of evidence were served 22 months later. No alternative science evidence was provided at application stage whatsoever, notwithstanding the fact that the council indicated that it was required, as was recorded by the appellant's own planning statement. That's all in relation, sir, to the last appeal. A sensible approach would be to undertake the survey, which can inform the selection of the appeal site. The appellant appears to have done the opposite. It's put the cart before the horse by providing the ASA after the local authority had refused the first application. It appears to be an after the event justification for the appellant's choice. At the last inquiry, in cross-examination, the appellant's then planning consultant, Mr. Snedden, confirmed that he did not know how the appellant came to select the site for the proposed development and was unaware whether any informal site selection assessment was undertaken. The first ASA was criticised by the decision letter. The appellant, informed by the interrogation of its first ASA, has had the time and resources to recast its ASA in a way which banishes all uncertainty and doubt. It ought to be unimpeachable. Thirdly, the appellant knows and has known from the outset that the council does not advance a positive case identifying specific sites which are suitable and available. The council does not have the resources to draft its own rival ASA. This means that there's even greater onus upon the appellant to ensure that its ASA, which is the only ASA before the inquiry, is thorough and robust. Given that the appellant knows it is the only one calling expert alternative science evidence, it's all the more important that the evidence is objective and comprehensive. The second ASA, the ASA which is before you, sir, does not command confidence. The council commissioned a review of the ASA. The intention was to have an independent appraisal of the cogency and robustness of it. The council does not have the resources of the appellant. It was simply not in a position to undertake its own ASA. The review is not, and was never intended to be, an alternative ASA. The final draft of the review was received by the council on the 1st of September and was served on the appellant after your ruling, sir, at the CMC on the afternoon of the 8th of September. The review casts considerable doubt on the robustness of the ASA. That the review identifies 14 candidates which had not been assessed at all by the ASA is troubling. Even if ultimately the appellant can show that each of these 14 candidates are not in fact runners, that does not detract from the force of the point that the ASA is insufficiently comprehensive to be relied upon. If a short review has thrown up 14 sites which the appellant failed to identify, how many more alternative sites has the appellant missed? This is not nitpicking. Had the council not commissioned its ASA review, doubtless, sir, you would have proceeded on the basis, you would have proceeded to determine the appeal entirely ignorant of these 14 sites. It's surprising that Mr. Caravan's proof does not explain why the ASA missed these sites. The reasonable inference to draw is there is no good explanation. Put bluntly, the ASA lacks credibility and it's not worth the paper it's printed on. In conclusion, sir, the appellant has failed to demonstrate very special circumstances, and in due course, you will be invited to dismiss the appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Smythe. Okay, thank you, both advocates. Thank you for your openings and for providing those in writing. I'm going to now move on to interested parties. I note that the room, I wasn't going to ask interested persons to come to the witness table. I was rather hoping, I mean, it's your choice really. If you were more comfortable, I was hoping you could sit at that table there, but there aren't any microphones there. So are you happy to go? Yeah, okay. No, if you're not comfortable doing that, but if you'd like to come forwards, thank you. And yeah, just introduce yourself briefly. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm John Ogborn, Chair of Bottisham Parish Council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. We've commented on the previous planning application and made a submission to the subsequent appeal. And on both occasions, we made clear that the council does not support this planning application on a number of counts. Before I go on to my prepared message, I would just like to highlight that obviously I've received new information this morning and seen the map 004B, which indicates that the access to Rowan Close from the site where particularly where the vicinity of where the social affordable housing is planned, really significantly impacts on this whole planning application. Knowing the village very well, of course, one of the great benefits of the Rowan Close access, it would allow easy access from children living in the social housing to get to the primary school and to get to the secondary school, which is a bit further on, but the kids would still go through what we call the Park Estate, and most of their journey will be quite safe. If the Rowan Close is not available as an access point, it will put all children, both primary and secondary school children, being forced to go straight down the high street, which is quite a busy street, particularly at peak periods. And there's no cycleway. So I think in terms of safety to kids, that's a point I'd really ask the inspector to take into account in considering the merits of this application or this appeal. So I'll go back onto my prepared message, if I might. Firstly, we're very opposed to this application because we regard this area of Greenbelt as having long a high landscape value, which we've emphasized time and again when this area has been looked at, not only just recently, but in previous reports looking at this area. As has been emphasized, we only have 3% of ECDC land designated as Greenbelt. And so it's really important we protect what we do have in East Cambs. As Mr. Ebe has concluded in his review of sites paper, and to quote, there are other alternative sites within the district and market catchment area that are not within the Greenbelt, and where in principle a retirement or care living scheme could be delivered. So we are firm in believing that there's no good reason to build on this area of Greenbelt. Secondly, the whole area of affordable homes. We recognize the need for affordable homes, and I've actually set aside an area to build 50 affordable homes on in Bottisham and on Greenbelt, and it's being built now. I walk past it every day and I saw it going up today. And And this area is going to provide us with many years of affordable homes. We don't think we need any more in the area. So I think the contribution of an additional affordable homes on this site has no relevance to Bottisham itself. Thirdly, the whole area of do we need retirement homes in Bottisham? One of our residents who wrote in to this, made comment on the initial application, lives in Arbor Close in Bottisham, and she's a senior manager in the county's social care department, planning for care provision for over 65s across the country, across the county rather. And she made comment as an interested party, as a resident, rather than in a professional capacity. But she makes the point that there's not been a need identified for additional retirement accommodation in the Bottisham area. And we would further add that only 7 miles away and well within the catchment area, that another nearly identical village is being built at Stapleford. We're also concerned about the impact on medical provision. Now, Dr. Keith's going to be speaking on this, so I'll make no further comment, except to say we fully support her concerns. And then finally, I'd just like to comment on the impact on care home staff recruitment. The resident of Arbor Close I've just referred to draws attention to the very high number of care homes. We have 4 care homes already in Bottisham, in quite a small village. These providers already find recruitment challenging due to our inadequate public transport links to major population centres. The addition of a retirement village, whose residents will increasingly require care at home as they age, will only add to the challenges of recruiting care staff for our current providers, who I know are concerned about the impact of this on their ability to find staff. So in conclusion, we would ask that the appeal is firmly rejected, because there's no sufficient need for further affordable homes in Bottisham or a retirement village that justifies development on a very special area of Greenbelt outside of the development envelope. Further, a retirement village will negatively impact on the medical and elderly care of other Bottisham residents. Thank you for your attention and listening.
Thank you, Mr. Ogborn. I will ask, in fact, I'm going to move the screen firstly, because I can't see Mr. Walton. Sorry, I didn't move the screen so I can see Mr. Ogborn, but I don't need this, so So yes, sorry, thank you. Mr. Walton, are there any points you'd like to make in response? Now, let me just add that I am going to pick up some of the points raised in tomorrow's session, but you do have the right to respond if you wish at this stage.
No, sir, thank you. And knowing that we will be picking up some of these topics in roundtable discussion, I won't have any questions directly, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ogborn. Mr. Smythe, I'm assuming you don't have any comments to make, given. No, but I mean, there is discretion. Mr. Ogborn, would you like to take a seat? So, as I say, I will cover some of these points in tomorrow's session. In addition, I've made notes of the points you've made as well, so they'll be taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I've pressed the wrong button. Not having a good few minutes here. Not sure. I think we're back on track. Can I just apologise as well? I did call you Dr. Tamara, and I meant Dr. Keith. So please accept my apologies. Thank you. Hi, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm Councillor Charlotte Kane. I'm the District Ward Councillor for Bottisham Ward. And as such, I talk to a lot of residents in Bottisham itself and the surrounding villages. I'm speaking, first of all, as myself, and then I'll introduce myself separately when I talk on behalf of a colleague. So Bottisham, as everybody knows, sits near Cambridge, and its green belt helps it to protect its character as a village. These particular fields are part of the shape of the village. They create a large green space separating built areas. And although the fields are not open to the public, they are visible from a public right of way and from various other points within the village. They also impact on the setting of heritage assets and the conservation area, which are particularly important to people within Bottisham. So they should only be developed in exceptional circumstances. And so that seems to hinge around whether East Cambs needs more retirement housing and whether Bottisham is the place to put it. I think we all agree that East Cambs does need more retirement housing, but I don't think any such need has been demonstrated in Bottisham. As we've heard, Bottisham already has provision. It has 2 large care homes and 2 smaller ones. It also has quite a few bungalows, many of which are supported by one of the care homes. And the provision that is existing in Bottisham, as I understand it, has vacancies both for residents and staff. So this is a large development, and East Cambs local plan allocates Ely, Littleport and Soham as the locations for the bulk of our development, not Bottisham. And partly because of that, the market towns are where the bulk of our population live. And that's where they want to retire. So that's where we need the retirement homes. I was talking to an Ely resident recently, and they'd been unable to find a care home in Ely for their father. So they'd found themselves in a position of having a 60-minute round trip to visit him, a trip which they could only do because they had a car. Now, Bottisham is a similar distance away from Ely, and there is no direct public transport between Bottisham and our market towns. So if we have a large residential care home or care village, retirement village there, how are relatives and friends going to get to visit? And how are the residents of that retirement village going to get out and about beyond Bottisham? And as we've heard, how are staff going to get to work in the retirement village? As we've heard, the alternative site assessment seeks to show that there's exceptional need, but we have advice that it isn't robust and it's excluded several possible alternative sites. One of the things I find talking to residents in Bottisham and the surrounding villages is how happy they are with the service they get from the GP surgery, and how concerned they are that this development could place unnecessary pressure on that surgery and might reduce the ability for that surgery to provide for the residents. And we'll be hearing from someone who knows a lot more about that than me. But I can present the view of the residents who are very worried that this development could impact on it. As we know, we earlier heard that there's a proposal that they might remove the cycle and walking access at the Rowan Close area. And that worries me significantly, because this council, we don't have, being a rural area, we don't have a lot of provision for active travel. And we do have a lot of roads that are increasingly dangerous for people to use for active travel, including Bottisham High Street. So removing this active travel route would be really, it would be counter to what this council is trying to do. We try to encourage active travel on all our developments, but specifically, as we've heard, the affordable housing is going to be there. One assumes there will be quite a few families, And we want those children to start using active travel. We want them to cycle to school or to cycle to visit their friends. We don't want them to learn to become dependent on cars. And if I was a parent, I wouldn't want my young children going out onto the high street in order to cycle to the primary school. So losing that route, I think, has a huge impact on whether or not those affordable houses would actually function properly for the families living in them. So in summary, I think this is just the wrong place for this development. It's greenbelt land. Further provision of retirement homes isn't needed in Bottisham. ECDC's local plan states that development should concentrate on the market towns of Ely, Littleport and Soham. The residents of East Cambs who want further provision of retirement homes, generally speaking, live in Ely, Littleport and Soham. So that's where the retirement home should be. And there's no direct public transport between Ely, Littleport and Soham and Bottisham. So it's the wrong place. So that's the end of my submission. If I could move on to my colleagues.
Yes, thank you. If you'd like to move on.
So Councillor Claire Daunton, who's the county councillor for the neighbouring division, she apologises that she can't be here today, but she has a county council meeting that she's required to attend. I should explain that the doctor's surgery covers a lot of villages, including many villages in Councillor Daunton's division. So that is her main concern. So she says, I'm the county councillor for the division that borders on Bottisham. The services and facilities in Bottisham, importantly the GP surgery, are crucial for several neighbouring rural villages and settlements spread over a wide geographical area. I'm also a patient of the GP surgery and a member of the patient participation group. My opposition to the application is threefold: over provision of facilities for the elderly in this particular area, additional burden on public facilities, and building on greenbelt land. It's well known that Bottisham has 2 significant elderly care facilities in addition to other smaller such facilities and sheltered housing. These are located at one end of the village in proximity to that proposed for the new development. This co-location is far from ideal if one wants to create a diverse and fully integrated village community. The GP practice will make its own statement on these points, but from the perspective of a local councillor and of a member of the surgery's PPG, it's important to state that the practice is already overburdened, and this inevitably has an effect on the patient list in terms of the demands on GP and dispensary time. Further, even if there were to be space to expand the surgery physically, which there is not, the prospect of funding a larger practice, of finding more medical staff to fill the expanded space given current national shortages, is quite remote. In short, the GP services in Bottisham could not cope, and I do not have any prospect of coping with the care needs of a retirement village of 170 dwellings. The well-being facilities proposed for the development do not encompass the level of medical care that is offered by the GP practice. The additional numbers of people will inevitably bring additional cars, both for staff coming in and out daily, as well as those used by residents and residential carers. Although there are limited bus services, their funding is at present only short-term. Whilst it is the confirmed aim of local authorities to provide much better public transport, this depends on external funding and decisions that are external to Bottisham. As it stands, the retirement village will put significant additional pressure on roads and traffic management in an area of the village where there are small local roads already busy for traffic accessing routes to Ely, Newmarket and Cambridge, and more locally to the primary school, 304 pupils, and to the village college, 2,000 pupils. My final point is that the proposed development is on greenbelt land. In effect, greenbelt land is being used to provide housing which under normal circumstances would not be allowed unless it was for 100% affordable housing and was a rural exception site. The provision of a retirement village is another mode of exception or exemption in relation to the green belt. But here in this application, the provision of affordable housing is only at 30%. The release of greenbelt land is not suitable for the purpose of this application, not on this scale, nor in this location.
Thank you, councillor Kane, and on behalf of councillor Daunton, is that correct pronunciation? Thank you. One question, either for yourself or somebody else can point me in the right direction. There's been talk of a school in the local area. Where are the nearest schools? Or could you point me in the evidence as to where they are? Yes, providing yes. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks.
If I might add, that when you visit, you'll see that to get to the secondary school, they would still have to go on the high street. But the Greater Cambridge Partnership is looking at putting in what they call a greenway that would make travel safer between the bit of the high street where Beechwood Avenue would come out and the secondary school.
Okay, so yeah, this is the interaction between the proposed scheme and other potential schemes coming forward in terms of the greenway and that accessibility, that relationship.
Yeah, so we're in discussion now with the Greenways team.
Yes.
Negotiate Greenway goes up to the other end of the park. So which sorry.
No, that's fine. I think what my question was going to be, and I'll ask it now, is the concern isn't that this is potentially a through route which might be severed if this connection doesn't come to fruition? Or I thought the concern was that the accessibility from the proposed site in relation to the greenway is the concern, not that this would be a through route for existing residents, if you like.
It's the access to the site. You've got the primary school.
Yeah, understood. That's
But
fine.
if this was lost, then they'd have to go down a very busy high street where there's no greenway.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Mr. Walton, I am going to address this tomorrow, so I'll ask probably similar questions actually, rather than try to keep things in kind of some kind of logical order. So yeah, you will get a chance to address that tomorrow. Councillor Kane, is there anything else? Because thank you for that. Much appreciated. Sorry, Dr. Keith, would you like to come forward? Just to add, I have obviously received your written correspondence as well, but by all means, if you'd like to tell me your concerns.
Thank you. I am Dr. Tamara Keith. I'm a GP partner of Bottisham Medical Practice and I'm representing the views of Bottisham Medical Practice. I qualified as a doctor from Imperial College in 2008 and have worked at Bottisham Medical Practice since 2015. I've been the lead GP for Queen's Court Residential Home since 2017 and have previously worked at Huntingdon Road Surgery, which is of significance as has some extra care accommodation. So I am aware of the needs of the residents in such a facility, and this facility was called Abbey Fields. I'm in slight disbelief, frankly, of being here in October 2023, repeating the same evidence at this appeal today when I spent 10 days as a Rule 6 party on this case only last year. Today, I'm an interested party rather than a Rule 6 party because I'm unable to take the time off from patients for a 10-day period, which I assumed that it might be. Bottisham Medical Practice strongly opposes this proposed development. Our position remains unchanged from the previous planning application, which was dismissed on appeal. We strongly oppose the proposed development on the basis it will overwhelm the primary care service provided by the practice. We're classed as a small semi-rural practice with a list size of just under 6,000 patients. The practice already has responsibility to look after patients in Hilton Park Nursing Home, Eden View Nursing Home, Oaklands Nursing Home, and Queen's Court Residential Home. 4% of our current practice population are in specialist elderly care. The practice also undertakes significant palliative care in the community within patients' own homes, as well as patients within the residential and nursing home sector. We have a very high proportion of elderly patients within our catchment already. 26% are over 65 years old, 14.5% are over 75. These figures are freely available from NHS England. The C2 planning status does not differentiate extra care units from residential care or nursing care. As stated in Carterwood Analysis Planning Needs Assessment from February 2023 on page 8, they confirm that the proposed development caters for residents in care needs of medium to high range, which are often cared for in care homes. The planning status of a C2 status defined as residential care homes, hospitals, nursing homes, boarding schools, residential college, and training centres. It makes no differing class for retirement village or private extra care units. The risk still remains that the residents would need the support of those in a nursing home, which would overwhelm the GP practice. As a GP partner at the surgery, I have to plan for the worst case scenario. There is no significant difference in this planning application from the previous application, which was dismissed at appeal. Planning statement plan states in paragraph 1.2 that the application follows a previous application for a similar development proposal in this location and a related appeal. The current proposals are generally consistent with the previous refused scheme, with the exception of the proposed maximum height parameters of the scheme, which differ in part. The applicant is stating the only difference in this application is the maximum height of the building, which is reduced from 12 metres to 10 metres. A reduction in height of 2 metres makes absolutely no difference to the number of residents the building can occupy, their care needs, or the impact on the local area or impact on the green belt. I can see no significant difference whatsoever in this appeal to justify any different outcome, and it should be dismissed on the same grounds as before. 170 extra care units with an occupancy of 1.3 to 1.5 people per unit results in 255 residents, which more than doubles our number of residents in specialist elderly care, which is currently 229. We currently spend 4 sessions of GP time, which is 4 half days, on ward rounds of the residential and nursing homes, plus daily extra visits. The new development would require the same input and result in an additional need for 4 sessions per week of GP time to cover this increase in elderly residents. I'm going on to talk about NHS continuing healthcare patients. As in the previous application, there was a specific mention of NHS continuing care, and that patients eligible for this would be able to live in this development. This has not been clarified in the new application, but the application does state the only difference is the height of the building. So I have to assume and plan for the fact the residents may qualify for NHS continuing care. Patients who qualify for NHS continuing care by definition have very high intensity care needs. These patients step down from hospital and do not step up from home. If these care units were to be marketed to this group of patients, it would without doubt overwhelm the practice. For clarification, NHS continuing healthcare patients are generally end of life, bedbound, have communication difficulties, require carers to help with washing, dressing, feeding, medication administration, and may even have behavioural difficulties in addition. They are the very highest need of patient. Bottisham has ample elderly care facilities. There is no demand locally for residential care home places or other elderly care facilities. There are 4 elderly care facilities, as I have mentioned, in the local area. And at the time of writing, which was only in July this year, and I have checked the figures are still accurate, within the 4 elderly care facilities of Hilton Park, Oaklands, Edenview and Queen's Court, the current vacancy rate is 24%. Although these are not privately owned by the occupants, they are elderly care accommodation, and the fact the vacancies are so numerous is of significant relevance, as illustrates Bottisham is already oversaturated with elderly care facilities. Tenure of accommodation is irrelevant to the care needs provided. It is the number and age of residents, and thus their health needs, that is relevant to us as GPs. This is simply not the correct location for an extra care housing development. Greenbelt land development should only occur in exceptional circumstances. Clearly, if there is a 24% vacancy in elderly care sites, there is no exceptional need in this location. When reviewing the alternative sites assessment, anyone can manipulate documentation to suggest this is the best location. Of course, for a developer wishing to gain planning permission for financial gain, this is the site available to them, and so no other site would be deemed acceptable. The alternative site assessment is therefore not credible. Excessive workload is generated by elderly care special housing. Bottisham already has too many elderly care housing places that generate excess workload for our practice. In the previous application, the developer stated that an area requires provision of accommodation for older people at a rate of 4% of the population of 75 years and over. The current rate in Bottisham is 26.5%. We have 862 residents in Bottisham over 75 years. 229 of them are in specialist care. Having reviewed all the evidence, I remain unable to differentiate the level of healthcare need of extra care housing versus a registered care home. Both house elderly residents. Both have on-site 24-hour care available. The only difference is tenure, ownership of the building within which they live. This has absolutely no impact on the healthcare requirement or impact on the healthcare services within a community. Bottisham Medical Practice has a significantly higher percentage of care home residents than other local surgeries. The proposed development would take us to 8.16% of total patients within elderly care housing, compared to a local average of 0.6%. This is a huge difference when we compare ourselves to neighbouring surgeries. Elderly residents have significantly higher healthcare needs than younger residents, and this proportion of elderly residents is simply unsustainable for us. At the previous appeal, it was suggested demand is not created, but catered for, and the new scheme will provide much needed facilities to help battle the rising demographic across the area. I would argue demand is created in a local area when a care facility which does not currently exist is built, and 255 residents move into the village where they have never lived. Previously, this demand would have been spread out among a number of different GP surgeries, but bringing all these residents into one area puts the concentration of demand beyond that of local supply. COVID-19 has demonstrated the dangers and severe risk of placing large numbers of elderly people together in close proximity in care facilities. The fact that residents can self-isolate in their own household provides no protection when carers move from residence to residence. I move on to viability of the practice. The increased demand, should this development go ahead, will not be met by increased funding, which means existing services will be cut and the proposed new development residents would be dangerously underserved and the safety of current patients compromised. Within the new GP contract of 2023, there is no increase in funding to take into account spiralling running costs and salaries, which in turns means a cut for budgets in general practice. There is no additional funding for care home residents or those in private extra care units. Several GP practices in the area have handed their contracts back, which highlights the challenge for general practice and the severe underfunding. This is in addition to the issue of recruiting GPs, which is only set to get worse in years to come, as the rate of new GPs is not replacing the number of GPs leaving the profession. We have had significant loss of GPs from the surgery in the last 12 months. We've lost 2 partners and 1 salaried GP due to the overwhelming pressure of working in primary care. It is possible that the addition of another elderly care facility within Bottisham would result in the closure of our list to new patients as a way of protecting the safety of our current patients, and potentially the closure of the practice as a whole, as it would no longer be viable. At the previous appeal, it was suggested that residents would not have to register at my practice, but could register elsewhere. Within the current elderly care specialist accommodation, there is not one resident who is registered elsewhere. We would have to plan for every new resident would be registered with us. At the previous appeal, it was also raised that we have a higher doctor to patient ratio than the national average. This is true. It does not represent spare capacity, but proves the point that with the elderly demographic we serve, we require greater resource than average to provide the required GP service. We are disappointed to see this application reappear despite going through several appeals the previous time. In summary, Bottisham Medical Practice strongly opposes the proposed development on the basis it will overwhelm the primary care service we provide and puts the practice at risk of having to close its list to new patients or ultimately close altogether. The inspector's decision was correct after detailed consideration of the issues during the previous appeal last year. The same developers are trying to build exactly the same elderly care facility for the same number of residents on exactly the same piece of land. The fact it is 2 meters shorter in height makes absolutely no difference to any of the issues previously raised, and it would be perverse to reverse the previous inspector's decision. I ask for significant weight to be given to the views, given it will be Bottisham Medical Practice which provides medical care to these facilities. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Keith. I've got possibly a couple of questions, but certainly one. I have a letter in front of me which was submitted in response to the planning application, and I assume you've seen this, but if not, I'm sure we can circulate a copy. It's from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Integrated Care System and the NHS Property Services. And they've responded to the planning proposal and effectively acknowledged that there would be pressures on Bottisham Medical Practice. And they've recommended a contribution from the developer, which is £115,733. Firstly, have you seen the letter? And secondly, if you haven't, then obviously you can't comment on whether you agree with the conclusions of the letter or not. But it was more, my second question was going to be about the contribution itself, which is intended to provide you with additional floor space, I think. Not exactly, but it's certainly a contribution recommended in order to mitigate the impact on the surgery. Do you have any comments on that aspect?
I think that the problem with it is it's not ongoing funding. A one-off contribution of around £100,000 to supposedly increase the size of our surgery is more theoretical, because there is nowhere we can expand to. We cannot get the staff, we do not have the room to put them in. And I cannot see, we would then enter a ridiculous situation of having yet another planning application to do with this planning application to increase the size of the surgery. I just think it's not feasible. And the problem is not, space we have, but it's physically the demands of this facility, as I've described, that we already have so many elderly care residents, we just can't double the number.
Okay, my second question was, again, something I will ask the appellant about either today or tomorrow. And that was really something that was referred to in the opening, but it's also in the evidence, that the Care Quality Commission will be registered on site to provide some care provision when residents need it. Do you have any comments on that aspect of the proposal and whether that would or would not mitigate to any extent the pressures on the surgery?
So all that means is, so for somewhere to be registered as a care facility, so extra care unit, residential home, nursing home, they have to be registered with CQC. That's all that means. There will be no medical doctor on site. My understanding from before was that residents would have to pay privately for carers to come in. So there may be carers on site which can provide care, but that is absolutely no different to a residential home that we already serve that calls us multiple times a day to review patients.
Thank you. And one more question. You did, I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong and I've misinterpreted what you said. I think your suggestion was there wouldn't be any difference, any material difference between a care home and the type of accommodation that's proposed here.
For us as GPs, we would plan it in the same way because of the age of the residents, so they would have similar healthcare needs.
Okay, and the other sites that have been talked about today, again, I'll probably delve into this in a bit more detail. Are they the existing facility in Bottisham? Is that a C2? Is that a care home in the traditional sense, or is that a similar type of scheme to the one proposed here?
We have Hilton Park, which is a nursing home. We have Eden View, which is a very specialist nursing home for neurological injuries, really. We have Oaklands, which is particularly for residents with dementia. And we have Queen's Court, which is a residential home. So it's slightly lower need than nursing home. But when you take them all together, their vacancy rate was around 25%.
Sorry, just on that point, your suggestion is that they have 25% of available space within those units.
Yes.
is free.
Yeah, it
is
is
available.
It's true that
Okay.
those are the true figures.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
1 in 4 rooms is empty.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walton, just to help you out, I am going to cover some of these questions tomorrow, but certainly it will be covered in this session on planning obligations. I'm not entirely sure whether this will be covered in the obligation that comes before me. But I will be exploring some of these points in that session. However, while Dr. Keith is here, more than happy for you to provide any comments on this aspect now, if you wish.
Yes, it was just to get my understanding of what was being said in terms of the overall position. You told us a couple of times that the inspector's consideration last time around was correct and that the scheme should be turned down on the same grounds, but you'll recall, of course, that the inspector didn't agree with the arguments you were putting forward and that you're repeating here today. The inspector looked at those issues and concluded, in fact, that even the offered contribution wasn't necessary from a planning policy point of view.
I accept that that was his decision from planning rules, but I disagree with the rules, but yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand you disagree, but nothing has changed fundamentally. You're presenting the same arguments in essence now that you were then.
And I'm delighted you say so, because yes, so the same outcome should come.
Thank you, same outcome. Okay.
Okay, no, really appreciate, I know the circumstances by which you've attended today, so I do appreciate you taking the time to attend the inquiry. I know you've got other pressing matters, but you're more than welcome to stay for the duration of the 4 days. You might be able to join online as well. So thank you.
So, and if I may just pick up on that point in terms of timing, I don't know what Dr. Keith's availability is later in the week, but we are currently looking at discussing the section 106 obligation, which includes that financial contribution on Thursday morning. And obviously we can keep you informed as to timings on that, just in case you're able to slot into it. Appreciate you're very busy, but just in case.
Yes, hopefully you do have a copy of the timetable in front of you, but we should be sticking to that timetable. So if you were to able to attend or join online, for example, please do contact the council. Okay, thanks. Are there any other comments that people would like to make? No, okay. I think it's probably best now to have an early lunch. and we will come back at 1:30. Now, this afternoon, I am going to focus on alternatives. There has been mention of need, and the two things are linked to some extent. As far as is possible, I'm going to try and address any questions I have in relation to need in the session tomorrow morning, and try and focus solely on the alternatives this afternoon, so it's clear in my mind kind of the arguments and the discussion, just to keep it on track. So yes, Mr. Walton.
Just to add to that, certainly we are anticipating, I'm sure the council are too, effectively using that pack that we've prepared, or whatever document, and just going through, I think there are 15 sites, and discussing their availability, suitability and deliverability. And that's sort of alternative site assessment. And then, of course, absolutely tomorrow talk about need and other planning matters, and then planning balance in the live sessions tomorrow afternoon.
Yes, so the agenda, wherever, I'm not sure I have a copy. Yes, okay, so the agenda, let me just double check the agenda to see if it is accurate. So point number 3, the methodology. I'm going to be asking a few questions and maybe prompt a discussion on the methodology and how the site has been identified, and then move on to the list of sites. So I think the document will be really useful, which is document you'll have to help me, 12, is it? I'm guessing there, but oh, right, okay, sorry, I6, and that will be useful. And obviously the statement of common ground, the council's evidence, which also contains the alternative assessment, and then the original alternative assessment and the proof on alternatives. So there's quite a few documents there, but if we can have those to hand this afternoon. Okay, people happy with an hour? Yes, okay, we'll break now and we'll reconvene at 1:30. So thank you all. The